Hello, my name is Jonathan Butner, and this is my class project on India. So up here at the top left, I have a map of India here. For those of you that don't know, it's right next to China. The Middle East is right here. Europe would be over here. Africa somewhere over here. And the US would be off the screen. Over here on the right is a common site for agriculture in India. A lot of it is done by hand. So before I begin, I believe that in order to know where you are, you need to know where you came from. So I'm going to start this presentation off with a little history lesson on India's economy. And so everything was going okay, but the trouble really started after World War II. And that's because India traded with the Soviet Union, and they traded for oil, and they got their oil at really low prices. Well, the problem is when the war ended, the Soviet Union collapsed. And so India had to go to other countries to get oil. And they ended up paying much higher prices than what they were used to. And they basically ran out of money and their whole economy fell apart. On the bright side, they have turned that around. And today their economy is growing at a very high rate of 7%. It's one of the highest out there. And that's thanks to all their new rules and regulations, and they invested a lot, and they also consumed a lot by investing, specifically in technology. I have pictured here, these are all big tech giants. These are their campuses in India. You have everything from Dell doing laptops and Verizon doing phones, and you name it, it's basically in India. The other statistic that's on the rise is their population. Their population is increasing by 1.47%, and their current population is only 1.3 billion people. That's more than the U.S., and that's actually 18% of the world population. You can see down here in this chart, the darker the color, the more people the country has, and so nothing compares to China and India. The top industries in India, the top industry is actually agriculture. It employs 60% of the total population, and the next highest one is the railroad. That's their main form of transportation, and so they have to hire engineers, people to load the train, people to take care of the tracks, signalmen. And the third largest industry is the army, and they actually have the second largest army in terms of people, how many people they have signed up in the world. A big upcoming industry, though, that people are keeping an eye out on in India is the mining. This was one of the ways that they turned their whole situation around. They realized that they're sitting on the 6th largest iron reserve as well as large coal and copper reserves. And so they poured a lot of money into getting all this heavy equipment and technology for mining, and they're making a lot of money on it. They're actually the second largest exporter of steel in the world, and the exports for coal and copper are expected to double within 5 years. India's government is a democracy, and so the people vote in the elections, but the problem is that they have an illiteracy rate of 25%, and that means that the right person isn't always elected, and that has led to rampant corruption in India. And the church I go to, we have Father Raj. He's actually from India. He said that corruption takes place in 2 forms. I have pictured here people will take money bribes, but then he said part of the reason that he became a priest is because the other corruption that takes place is prostitution. If someone wants something done, or they just want something, they will, he said fathers will even prostitute their daughters or other family members to get what they want. So that's a very big problem. The results of that economy and the government, it has led to a 30% poverty rate, and 15% of the population is undernourished. And you can see here in this chart here on the bottom left, the red area is the worst, and then the yellow is second worst, and the lighter colors are the not as bad. But that chart, when you look at it, kind of overlaps with the agriculture in India. So most of the crops are grown here on the west side and the north end, and so a lot of the hunger was right here, and you don't really see anything. Some of the major crops in India, they grow rice, wheat, potatoes, sugarcane, coffee, and they're actually one of the largest countries for fisheries. They produce a lot of fish. As I already stated, they employ 60% of the population, and agriculture contributes 25% to the economy. So it's not only the largest employer, but it's also the largest in terms of land. Agriculture takes up 2/3 of the total land. You can kind of see that in this chart as well. But one big problem is it's very inefficient, specifically when it comes to harvesting, shipping, and storing the food, which we'll get to. One of the inefficiencies in the farming is irrigation. Only 1/3 of the total farmland is irrigated, and so you can see here on the left, this is what most of the farms look like. They flood or they don't get enough water because they're not irrigated, and that's partially due to the fact that they have 3 growing seasons and they rely on only one growing season, the monsoon season, to supply the water. But the monsoons are very irregular and inconsistent in when they come and how much rain they dump on the ground. And the irrigation that they're installing, it's not like what we're used to here in the U.S. They don't have the technology. So it's mostly just simple trenches to drain the water to and from one place to the other. But they are starting to get tubing to move the water around, similar to tile drainage. Another good improvement that the agriculture has seen was the mechanization. It began in 1960, and so even though it's been 50 years, they haven't fully converted to mechanized farming like we are here in the U.S., but that's partially due to the irrigation. You can see a big tractor like this would get stuck easily in this mud, and so that's why you'll see a lot of smaller mechanisms to help just increase efficiency by a little bit, because a little bit goes a long way. Another big problem they have is they have depleted their soil. You can see here in this graph, the lighter colors, the lighter orange and the lighter green, was their yields in 1981 to 1990, and then the darker ones on the right are 1991 to 2001. So it's actually decreasing, and that's partially due to the fact that the farmers don't have the knowledge or the resources to take care of their soil. So that'll be a big problem in the years to come. And a really big problem for the economy and agriculture and just India as a whole is a lack of paved roads. You can see here, this is how they pave roads in India. And there was an article that I read. Last year they spent $11 billion and they paved only 3,700 miles. This article was written 2 weeks ago, and this year they're spending $33 billion hoping to pave 9,000 miles. And they're hoping for 15,000 next year. But this is such a big problem that factories can't function at their highest capacity because they can't ship what they're producing off their property fast enough. So this is a very big problem. But one problem that relates to all of these is money. It's going to be a slow process because you can't get the farm equipment to the farm without a paved road, but you can't get the paved road without money, and you'll make money by farming. So they'll have to go little by little, improving each one a little bit at a time. Thank you.